Welcome to This Week in Virginia, and a very special welcome to the Honorable Susan Swecker, Chairwoman of the Democratic Party of Virginia, a longtime friend that I have known. And now, as we're starting our second year of This Week in Virginia, after about a decade of doing This Week in Richmond, I'm getting around to having shows with the chairs of the two parties. And Susan, you're the first, and we look forward to having Rich Anderson on soon. And just really want to help our viewers understand a bit more about what party chairs do. But before hopping into some of the questions that I would have, let our viewers know that you got your BA in political science from Mary Baldwin, and then your law degree from Washington Lee University. And really, your very long career, distinguished career in state politics, started with your first elected position. Maybe it was chairwoman of the Highland County Democratic Committee at age 22. What got you interested? Let's go back to the beginning. What got you interested in politics at that level?
First, David, thanks so much for having me on your show, and I appreciate the question. But I came from, I'm from a rural family up in the mountains, Highland County, prettiest county in Virginia, more sheep than people. But my family was one that sat around and talked, at the dinner table about politics. I did think when I was in high school that I wanted to be a journalist. But I read an article in Time or Newsweek, which we got at the library then, at the high school library. And I would read that every week about a new degree called political science. And I started reading about that, and I was like, oh, I think I want to do that. I think I would like to do that, because my daddy and I would sit up every year, election night, and watch the returns and talk about it. And we were just, still fairly removed, right, from what was going on in Richmond or DC, but we talked about it, and it just seemed exciting, and I couldn't wait to, go to college and volunteer at the headquarters in Stanton, and get, and work and get involved, roll my sleeves up and all of that. So, when you're 22 years old, you think you can do anything. So I just, offered myself up, ran and won. And it really is just as simple as that. It's kind of the audacity of thinking you know how to do things.
Well, that's some encouraging words that you're giving to folks that are out there and watching this, and who maybe are finishing high school or in college, to say, get involved, get involved, yeah. and put yourself up for office even.
And I have to say, I feel very fortunate, and I try to return the favor and never forget that, to have had really great mentors along the way. You mentioned I went to Mary Baldwin. I had a wonderful journalism professor, Dolores Lescure, who was the mayor of the city of Stanton later, who until she passed, stayed in touch with her. She was always encouraging me and giving me, sound advice. Robbins Gates was my political science professor, who also stayed in touch with. And when I came down to the Virginia General Assembly first time as legislative aide, somebody it's former Senator Frank Nolan, another person that took me under his wing. And so, when you're the kid that shows up at the headquarters and you offer to do anything, sweep the floors or whatever, people kind of take notice of you. And I just had such great mentors then who helped me and promoted my involvement. And that is something that I feel is important, and I have tried to do and remember to do as I have gotten a little older.
Well, and I had forgotten about your connection with Frank Nolan. And I still hear from him, and he's still involved in matters over in the valley. And
he's got that farmer. He's at that farmer's market every Saturday with his eggs and pork and all kinds of things. He's very active. Yeah.
Yes, that's on my to-do list sometime after the session, to get up to that farmer's market and get a chance just to surprise him and see him. But that would be nice. Well, now, your involvement at the state level after Highland County, tell us the transition there. We know that you were executive director of the party at the time. You had other roles, but you now have had a time as party chairwoman. I believe, if I'm right, Susan, 2 terms, with a third one that's on the horizon. But what was your first involvement with the state party?
So I became, I had worked in some campaigns, local campaigns and statewide campaigns. And then in 1986, when Jerry Blount was governor, I became political director of the Democratic Party, and then ascended to the position of executive director. And, to me, I never thought, look, I'm a rural kid from Highland County, graduated in a class of 28. And, Democrats were in control of everything then, maybe a different kind of Democrat, but like we ran everything then. And to me, that was like really huge to aspire to get to that position. And I took it very seriously. Some of Larry Fromme, who Jim Turpin knows very well, very well, was the chair. And we, it was different times though. We were over in the old City Hall building there, but think about it before the internet, before social media. People actually had to pick up the phone and track somebody down and or go visit somebody face to face. Campaigns were done a little bit differently, but we were I think some of the first to try to talk about modernizing the party, but to bring the House and Senate together and to start talking about coordinating with the party and to run things in a little more modern way. And that's actually how I first got to know Mark Warner, was as executive director of the party, when he was interested in getting to know Virginia Democrats, and knew he wanted to do something, but he didn't know exactly what he wanted to do.
Along the way, I'm not sure just what role you were in at that time, but I know that it's something that you were really credited for, even now, looking back almost 2 decades, was getting Virginia's presidential primary date changed. That seems between each party nationally, as they wrestle with at what point on the calendar will they get the primary. And I think it goes way back to the early 2000s, I think, that you were able to get that shifted.
Yes, that was in 2003. And as a state party chair, you are automatically a member of the Democratic National Committee. And the Rules and Bylaws Committee, of which I am a member now, was not then, but they are the ones that you vote on the calendar and the rules to be set for each state. And it's a real serious process. And I had watched for years as we stuck with the outdated caucus mode way down in the cycle, and where we weren't relevant by the time we had our process, the nominee had been decided. And so I pushed very hard with others. And we got, I believe then it was Senator, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Senator Whipple maybe, and Senator Lambert, and I can't remember who on the House side, to put in a bill to move the date up. And I had a little bit of trouble on that one. It's a really funny story. Senator Potts, former Senator Potts, God bless his soul, was one Republican who really helped me on it, because the Republicans didn't want the date moved up. And the message I got back was, at that time, John Edwards from North Carolina was seen as a serious threat, and they didn't want a chance of him. I know it seems silly now, but they didn't want a chance of him to break open and win Virginia. And I sent a message, back that, if Karl Rove and his people are worried about that, I'm going to hold a press conference and talk about it. And so kind of got, and I had some help on that. And so anyway, we got it through and moved it up. And that Super Tuesday through 2004 we had the candidates in here. It was the first primary that John Kerry had gotten over 50% of the vote. It sent him on the way. We had an epic fundraiser the weekend before that we used to call Jefferson Jackson. Now we call it Blue Commonwealth, but now we're in the mix. You know, I know every 4 years we're starting this cycle again, but it made us relevant. And what others have told me as a result, and again, I wouldn't I was like a dog with a bone. I wasn't going to let go of this idea, but I had a lot of help in getting this through and getting it passed. And Mark Warner was governor and signed the legislation. But what it also did that is really important is it laid we had a roadmap then to who some of our Democrats are, because we had them voting in the Democratic primary, and that is only growing over these presidential cycles where more and more Democrats vote. Because we don't have party registration in Virginia, it gives us a better roadmap for the next year.
That's interesting history. Susan, jump in now, if you will, and help people understand what really is the role, duties of a party chair, and yours may be different from Rich's, and we'll hear from him, but from the Democratic Party chairwoman, it's not a position, it's not a full, well, I'm not sure how much time, but it's not really considered a full-time position, even as the legislature is not full-time, as we can laugh about that. But it's a position of service. But what are the duties? What are the responsibilities? What are the powers that you have as chair?
Well, and I think that's a really good analogy, David, is to say it's not, seen as full-time, but just like the legislature, because it really is. And one of the reasons that I first ran was I felt like I was at a point in my life that I could devote a good bit of time to it. And, we've never had an easy year. I mean, we've had some great years of winning, but none of them have been easy. They've all been challenging, and particularly the pandemic have taken a lot of time and effort and focus on how to pivot to do things. But I think your base thing is, I'm basically like a chairman of the board, and I have a board of directors, which is a steering committee. I probably have a bigger steering committee than Rich does. I know I have a bigger central committee than he does, probably about three times the number. I think he has about 75, and I think mine's 225, 250, something like that. But there are certain, and they're boring details. There are certain things that you do. I mean, first of all, we want to elect Democrats, right? But then there's the, actual requirements that you must do year to year. Or so in a leading up to a presidential cycle, you submit your delegate selection plan, and then you implement it. And that includes all sorts of diversity pieces, all sorts of public relations pieces, all sorts of outreach stuff, and then working with your CD chairs to run their conventions and do ours. Same, a gubernatorial year is different, but in the last gubernatorial, we have primaries, so that makes it a little bit different. Again, we took on a different project last year and said, we're going to do like the DNC did in 2020. We're going to run the primaries. We're going to take that on. So we learned a lot. Don't know. it was interesting, but what it did by managing the primaries was that we gave the candidates wiggle room so that they didn't have to figure out how to accept 50 invitations and which to turn down, which, and which not. So we had, I think, 4, and we managed those and took that off the separate candidates plates. So those are some things like, sort of extras that you check the box on, but there are then, those day in and day out things that you are, that you are required to do per your party plan. And, we have a resolutions committee. We have a compliance department that helps our House and Senate candidates make sure that, and all of our candidates, and I say primary, I just got corrected that. I meant they were primary debates, not general election debates. So I don't want to confuse anybody over that. So there are a lot of programs that we have added for like this during session this year. It was like, okay, we don't have a governor now. And, that's where a lot of policy sets a tone, a lot of bill tracking, a lot of messaging. So we pulled together a team of 4 people to help the House and Senate and partnered with them to get to do a session program because we felt like there was a gap. I've never not had a governor since I've been party chair, and I know that left a vacuum that we weren't, quite frankly, weren't expecting, but we didn't miss a beat. We pulled together a program with the House and Senate and are working with them have been working with them every day during session to fill in those gaps.
Oh, that's a great overview. Great overview. One of the questions that Jim Turpin had as we were going over things was that you're likely one of the few leaders of the Democratic Party of Virginia who's experienced not having a governorship and or the General Assembly, and so make some comments on that. How has that been different? You started it by saying that you're working with members of the House and the Senate, but it's got to be a different role.
Yes. And one of the things when I announced that I was running way back in 2015, one of the reasons that I wanted to run was I wanted to put an infrastructure in place that would stand the test of time and would not just be from one election cycle to one election cycle. So, for example, if something happened that we did lose a governorship or we, lost the House, I mean, that was, I did not actually know that would happen, but that we would have the infrastructure in place to move forward. And unfortunately, we had an opportunity to test that out. And so I do think we have a good fundraising finance plan, a good finance team, a good base. I remember when we did not have a governor or any statewide offices before. I wasn't chair and had lost the House and Senate or close to it. And it was, hand to mouth and pretty tough. But we have, I really feel like we have a party that is stable and has shown through really aggressive communications, outreach with our stakeholders, donors, chairs, activists, that we are ready to hold Glenn Youngkin accountable and Republicans accountable. And we didn't just go to a corner and curl up in a fetal position. Having said that, did I have a couple extra bourbons and maybe a chocolate bar or two? Yeah, but then I got back up and said, okay, we've made too much progress and this is important, and we have a job to do.
Well, you mentioned Russ Potts, and you mentioned Frank Nolan you worked with, and we'll count those as 2, but what are some of the other memorable characters that you have worked with along the journey? And I know there's probably enough time. Who would you name?
Oh my golly, now I am going to sound like the historian of the Democratic Party of Virginia, but I have been so fortunate, David, through the years, and I kind of wish I had appreciated how lucky I was when I was younger to, come down here and sit and listen to, people like Dick Cranwell and Tom Moss and Glenn Croshaw, but not just Democrats. I want to say, those Mountain Valley Republicans like Pete Geeson, Emmett Hanger is somebody that I have a great deal of respect for and have known since I got in politics, because from the Valley. And Jeff Stafford, I remember sitting, in the remember old shoes one night and found out that Jeff Stafford played bridge with my Aunt Betty, and we had a big old time talking about that. Clint Miller. I mean, those Mountain Valley Republicans it was just so much fun. It's really when I talk to, a lot of the some of the staff in here, it's like, and they can't, it's kind of hard, as partisan as we are now, to understand that we're friends with those people. And of course, I have, Republican Party operatives that started out the same time I did. We fought like cats and dogs. Remind you that Jim Turpin was a Republican at one point, and he and Steve Hayner ran the Republican Party of Virginia, and Joe Elton. And we would get together after the election every year and compare notes and laugh and tell stories. So I love those days. And I think that's the thing. You just really want to try to get to know people on a personal level. You can't forget, like, the first African-American governor, Doug Waller, a great story. I have had so much fun traveling around Virginia with him and Mary Sue back in that, that 89 ticket. Those days were a lot of fun. And that election night was just something I will never forget. Just had to throw that in. There's a lot, I can't like kind of nail it, bring it back to one.
Right. Well, we'd have to have an entire show and have you prepared to name and tell stories. And
yeah.
Maybe that's a follow-up at some time too, to get you to do that.
Sure.
Sure. One of the things that I like that I've know about you and have read about you, that you talked about growing up, that you learned the value of listening to other people's opinions, about being open-minded, and then developing a tough skin. And I would imagine those three, and in particular the tough skin, has been something that has helped you on your journey in politics. And Susan, why haven't you run for office? I know running for chair of the party is one thing, but there's never been a Susan Swecker for Senate or for delegate or for just that didn't interest you?
I had people have asked me that before, but I always felt like I was a better behind. I don't know if you say behind the scenes, but some people are just better at the campaign logistics and things like that. So it just never really, I never really took it seriously. And I thank you for saying that. But I will tell you the one tough skin story, if you have a minute. I gave a speech for George McGovern when I was for president in high school, and look, we're a small school, we're all friends, and it didn't go very well. I feel like I got kind of heckled a little bit and stuff, and that was the day I think I really built a tough skin. It was pretty rough, and I still knew what I was talking about, but it's like, okay, that's what it's going to be like. I just need to get used to it. So no, David, I've enjoyed being that person, whether it's a campaign manager or party chair, and watching others and helping others, mentoring others and helping other people grow and promote them.
Well, and that's what every candidate needs at any particular office. Needs someone who's not trying to say push them aside and run for that office, but who's really working to help them. Now, we'll tell the viewers that I don't know for how far back in your history, but you've been president of Dividing Waters Public Affairs LLC. So you have your own consulting firm, as if you had any time other than being party chairwoman.
Well, I have to keep the lights on a little bit on my own home place. So I do have a consulting business, and I named it Dividing Waters because where I am from is the headwaters of both the James and the Potomac River. So I thought that was kind of fitting, that flows into either Richmond or DC.
And if someone looks up Dividing Waters Public Affairs LLC and sees the picture, they'll see the picture you're talking about too. That's got to be right there in Highland County.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. Well, Susan, I made reference earlier to the fact that you have fixed terms of 4 years, and if I look at the calendar correctly, then you'd be coming up on the possibility of being elected for a third term. When's the election?
So the election is in just a couple weeks, March 19th. I have an announcement video that we can send to you. It went out this morning, and with some strong endorsements. And so we will know on March 19th.
Before our time ends, in the last couple of minutes, what about this possibility of the House of Delegates running in 2022? Is this anything that, and I'm going to ask Rich Anderson the same question, is this anything that the political state parties get involved with on one side or the other? Should they wait and run in 23? Should they run in 22? Or is that one you all are neutral on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the right answer is, so we're just waiting to hear from the courts, and we will then, I know a lot of people have opinions on it. Every time look, I'm the one who said, people said, "Yay, Donald Trump! We can beat him," and then we saw what happened. So I think we will just wait to see what the court says, and then we'll go from there.
Well, and hopefully, for the sake of everyone, that will not be a long time in coming. And
that would be amazingly helpful. Yes.
Well, Susan, I want to give you the last word to say something else that I didn't perhaps ask you about that you thought, I thought sure David would ask me about this, and he didn't. And it was something that you'd like to say to give you the final word on This Week in Virginia today.
First, thank you very much, David, for your friendship and for asking me to be on this show. I do think that state party chairs have an important role, and for both parties. I think it is important that we have a strong political parties on both sides of the aisle. I think it is important to the survival of our democracy, which is still at stake here and around the world, and that we do important work. And I wake up every day thinking about that and working towards that goal. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Susan Swecker. Thank you very much.